I'd like to now let Mr. Brooks introduce each of the speakers this evening and talk about a few things that he would like to talk about. Ed?
Thank you very much, Susie, and also to Sue. It has been an honor to work with the Ivy Creek Nature Area / Riverview Farm. I was introduced to Sue through Parks and Recreation Department. I didn't understand how involved Ivy Creek Nature was with the county and the city. And so Sue was my guest back in May on the Yancey Advisory Panel monthly meeting. We just got to know each other. I got a chance to go out again to Ivy Creek. I'd been there for a conference before, but I didn't really know about the house. I didn't know about the barn. And so we just hit it off. And I said in my head then, come Black History Month, I want to do something big out here. So it has kind of worked that way. My cousin Simone here is on the line, but she has a saying on her email that says it doesn't have to look like it's coming together for it to come together. And actually, I keep that going all the time. So technical things can happen. We've got a great group that has signed on this evening. And so we are ready to get going as we talk about the history of Black farming in Albemarle County. We will extend that a little bit later on to include Charlottesville and Virginia as we go through the rest of the week and into April with a very special event that we'll talk about a little bit later. We are going to talk about, and I've had so many people email me and say, well, you know, my family member and this family member, and I really appreciate receiving those. We're starting out with these three, and then as we just continue on with this dialogue, you know, we'll continue to add other people as we go. We're keeping this conversational, you know, respectful, conversational, and please share things that you know. And we just, as Susie says, she's got questions, but we want this to be interactive. We're going to start out this evening with our three honored guests, which are no longer with us, but it's Sheffield Gardner, which Simone Gardner, his daughter, is going to be the presenter for him. But there are other family members that are on the line. Cavanza and Alita are siblings, and Evelyn Gardner, the spouse, is having a little bit of technical problems, but she still may get in before the evening is over. The second person that we'll be speaking of is Mr. Willie Hudson, and the presenter this evening will be his great-granddaughter, Tanisha. She is going to talk about his history throughout Esmont as a farmer. The Hudson family has land that's all over the community, and so she's got some really in-depth sharing to do with that. And then wrapping up the evening is going to be Ellie Tucker, who is going to speak for Mr. Butler, but there will also be other family members and co-workers that will be on the line. I met Ellie way back when I was in 4-H, and we always run into each other throughout the years, and she worked directly for Mr. Butler, and has just gathered a lot of information about his farming expertise, and his niece and other family members will be tuning in before the evening is over as well. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Simone, let me just say this before we're up to 41 people now. We are planning an event at Riverview Farm on Sunday afternoon, April the 3rd. It's going to be a reception with the descendants, as well as guests from all over Charlottesville, tours of the barn. We kind of moved it a couple times because of weather, and we just said, let's just go to April, and hopefully there won't be any snow then, so we can get this done. And we'll tell you more about that as we go along. And then this coming Sunday, special guest will be Dr. John Boyd, who will be speaking on behalf of the National Black Farmers Association, which he heads up. With that, Simone, we're going to go ahead and let you get started talking about your dad, Sheffield Gardner.
So first, I want to say hi to Ellie. I thought that was her. Good to see you. I was in 4-H with Ellie, so it's been a long, I was wondering if that was her. Hi, good evening. My name is Simone Gardner, and Rodell calls my dad Sheffield. He was affectionately known, but that was actually his middle name. So his name is Kenton Sheffield Gardner. I always told people that my dad was a full-time teacher wanting to be a full-time farmer, but because farming didn't pay, he had to do something to pay the bills. He enjoyed, I grew up, my brother, always says that I didn't do a bit of gardening or cleaning or any of that. So he was the one who did it. But my dad had, I remember him having a cornfield down 6. He rented some land from someone. Is that correct, Commander? He rented the land?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. He had some land with his siblings in Keene where he kept cows. But we grew up with chickens and pigs in the back yard. And Cavance's job was to feed the animals every day when he got home from school. And but my dad, he enjoyed farming, and so just honored to have him, recognized here as one of the farmers. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed farming probably more than anything else. I remember him staying out late on Saturday evenings, working out in the farm and coming in at 7 o'clock and, after dark. Didn't do anything on Sunday, but he truly enjoyed it.
Oh, wait, Simone. You mean we? Me and Dad. Not okay. You and Alita. You and Alita in the house and Mom in the house. We coming in on Saturday afternoon at 7 o'clock. And okay. On holidays, we came in at 4 o'clock because we had to eat Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas Eve dinner. So no, you and Alita and Mama, it was in the house. So you were not any a part of what you remember. So I just needed to state that. I do apologize, everyone.
You all hear that, right? He says it often. And Daddy had a big garden. He as he got older, the garden shrunk down. But we did used to have to go out and pick vegetables, sometimes the green beans, but not often. So
No, excuse me. When growing season when it was going on, it was every week. We had sheep, pigs, cattle, and horses.
You're right. Yeah.
But however, Alita and Simone was always in the house. We had to do when hay season came, we had to go out, and at that time it was square bales. So you had to manually go out in the field and pick the square bales up. And corn season, we didn't have a combine, so you had to go with a bucket each row and pick each corn off that to feed the pigs. So again, Simone and Alita, they remember what was going on, but me and Daddy was the only one that was ones who's out there doing the work. Thank you. I do apologize again.
He loves that, right? He loves it. Don't laugh at him, Rodale. Do not laugh at him. But yes, he is correct. And I do remember him taking us. We did go to the market with him to was it auctioning off the cows? Am I correct with that? Yes. Okay. At the market. And then I remember, because I enjoy food, as you can tell, I remember he slaughtered a pig one year, and we had fresh sausage and fresh pork loins and all of that wrapped up in the white butcher's paper, and the cow. He's getting ready to say something now, y'all. So I do remember that. Commander, you want to share your experience?
No, the only thing is, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to get off, but the only thing I can admit that the only thing Simone and Alita would contribute is when the cows got out and the neighbors call us and tell us that the cows was out, they would get out and help round the cows up so we can get them back in the field and fix the fence. That is the only part really that they really participated in. Really? They was in support. But that's it. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew. Really? Thank you.
And so, yeah, I do remember that. Remember when the cows were in Keene, and sometimes Daddy would call, and people would call and say the cows are out. And so we'd have to go, and he would have to whistle, and we have to get out in the middle of the road and get the cows back in. And I remember doing that up until I was in college. Yeah, that's the experience. Alita, you want to share anything?
I never helped gather any cows whatsoever. And hi, Ellie. I thought that was you too. I never helped gather any cows. I was scared to death of them.
Kavasi, you want to share anything else?
All I say is exactly. Thanks everybody for sharing your stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Susie, did you have questions? I did have one, but you go ahead.
So you said he was a school teacher. Other than being a farmer, did he have any other jobs besides that to help support the family?
Yes, he used to work part-time. He worked at Sears in Fashion Square Mall for the longest time. And then he worked at J.C. Penney. And I remember him having to go into work, and we would get the call. And I remember one particular Saturday, I think Vance had left home by then, but it was Mama, and I thought Alita was out there, but we were in Keene chasing the cow. I had no idea what to do. I just knew I watched him chase the cow. So we were in the middle of the road chasing the cow back out the road. And I couldn't understand why we had to chase the cows back, but it was because no one would hit and we get sued. So yeah, he worked part-time. He used to work part-time, Sears for the longest time, and then he went to J.C. Penney.
Yeah. I've always wondered, like, and I'm not saying this correctly, but like, how much is a steer, bull, whatever it is that you take to the market? Like, what type of money does that get when you get the cow butchered?
I'm glad you asked. Nowadays, I mean, well, it used to be you may get $2 or $3 per pound. Now, if you go to the grocery store, you know it's more like $5 or $6 per pound. So back in that day, if you take the steer, deer, sheep, or that any animal to the butcher, you know, they would pretty much charge you about $400 to do that. But in the return, you would get at least $1,000 back in that day worth of meat. Now in today's world, then that would be more $1,500, almost $1,800 for let's say 800-pound steer.
That's what you would leave the. Help me with this too. I know down on Franklin Street in Charlottesville, what do you call that place when you take your steer there? What do they call that?
The processing plant?
I guess so. Like, I know in Charlottesville, there's down like in the Belmont area, there's a place where people would take their livestock. Yeah, the livestock.
Yes,
yard.
yes.
So
yes.
you can leave there with $1,000 a steer?
No. So we're talking two different things. Simone mentioned earlier in the beginning of the meeting, where every Saturday we used to take our livestock to the stock market, and then we would unload the stock market. We had pigs, and we had cattle that the daddy sold there, and so that my daddy what he would do is he would buy everything as a baby, you know, pigs as a baby, grow them up, and then they would reproduce, and then so if for every let's say $500 the daddy would spend taking care of hogs, then he would expect a return of at least double that. But it all depends on what day, how the market was going on today. Just like today's time, you know, pork prices, commodities, everything goes up and down. So depending on the day where you sold it and the trade goes, that will determine how much money you would make or how much profit you would make, depending on all the work. But the bottom line is, I was the one cleaning out the hog pens. I was the one taking care of all the cattle and all of that. Daddy, he told me what to do. I had to do that when I got out of school. I couldn't go hunting. I couldn't go fishing until I did that. And I had to do my homework. So on most days, when hunting season comes, I couldn't do a whole lot of hunting squirrels and everything because I had to go and clean the pig pen out. But what Simone and Lisa doing, they was in the house. But again, I do apologize.
And I will say, Rodell, and I remember telling you, Susie, Cavance's first job was, and that's I was done with Van Cleef, where some people, it was a Caucasian wealthy family in Esmont, and they had an estate where people would go work, and he worked the farm there in the summer, and then he would have to come home and do the chores outside.
Yes, Van Cleef. They raised race horses for New York every year. They're a prominent family in Esmont. It's the Van Cleef family. They owned hundreds of acres in Esmont. So yeah, Simone is correct. That's what we did. And they raised horses. They raised professional horses strictly for horse racing. And right there, you know Van Cleef right there. You know Van Cleef right there.
I do. We have some questions in the chat, Susie, if you're watching that. And are there any other questions or comments before we keep on moving? But big group listening in. We're keeping it real.
Ed, let me jump in with a question. I think an overarching question I've been getting is, how long did your father farm? Like, did he grow up on a farm and then was taught by his parents? So that's one question. And then two, how big was your farm? And then how many, one of you talked about what animals you had, but people want to know, like, besides the crops, what other animals and what crops did you raise on that farm?
Okay, well, what Daddy had land, 60 Alita, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's what, 62 acres, Alita?
Yes.
Daddy had, okay, and so what he did was he used the 62 acres we fenced that and we put cattle on that. And so it had creeks and everything, and so what he did was he raised our cattle on that he didn't have to lease. And so as far as food is concerned, to feed the hogs, he leased land on 6, as Simone stated earlier in the meeting, and that was about 20 acres. And what he did was he grew corn on 10 acres, and then on the remaining 10 acres, what he did was he grew hay to feed the cattle. Excuse me. And then the cattle, what he did was on our home, at Mama's home right now, it's 2 acres, 2-3 acres. At least correct me if I'm wrong. I think 2.5 acres, 2-3 acres.
2 acres.
Okay, 2 acres. And then on that property, we fenced all of that in, and they raised chickens, sheep, and hogs on the 2 acres. And so we had. I think we were working on 3 different plots of land to take care of 3 different types of livestock.
And he went to school. His degree was in agriculture, so that's how he learned.
He went to Virginia State. Yeah, he was one of the leaders in Virginia State to start an agriculture program at Virginia State University. So,
right.
Yes.
Let me just state this.
I don't think his father raised either. So his parents. No, they learned it. He learned it in school.
Okay. And I'll just state, because these are relatives, but Simone, Cavanza, and Alita are all college graduates, which is what I know that their dad wanted to happen. So they were working hard in the yard, they were working hard in school, and still working hard. So Simone.
And I think, I could correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was the first one in our family to go to college. His story was that his dad didn't want him to go, wouldn't sign the papers. And so he had to do some creative work to get to school because he was determined to be better and do better. And so.
Okay, so that's too much information. That's too much information. Okay,
oh, you just put us on blast.
We got that part. It's too much information. Okay.
So yeah.
You got it.
Simone, when I spoke with you on the phone, you talked about his garden and how you went out to pick beans one time and then you weren't allowed to ever go back. What all did you all grow in that garden, and was it just for home use, and was, while you all were in the house, were you also canning and
That's right, Susie. Thank you. No, we did contribute. Thank you.
Yeah,
Susie.
whatever. Okay.
So my mom had us canning, and so the beans would come in, and I remember I hated canning. I hated it. And she made you stand up to do it. But yeah, we had to can. And I remember beans. I remember tomatoes were my favorite.
You didn't know, Simone. We had tomatoes. You don't know, Simone.
Collards,
we had onions. We had sweet potatoes, collard greens, white potatoes. We had sweet corn, everything. And we had pole beans, because Mama said we need to grow pole beans. We had pole beans. So you and Lisa, y'all picked them. Y'all cleaned them, but I was the one who picked them. And then so we had cucumbers, watermelon. We had a variety of garden, because it was like, I know it was about 1/4 of an acre of garden.
Yeah. And he wouldn't. I remember him trying his hand at watermelons, but I never saw a successful watermelon.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, yeah, okay. You didn't. I did.
But yeah, he had white potatoes.
My daddy had some good watermelons. Okay.
Y'all hear that right? I remember white potatoes, and I remember what I thought was so creative because the white potatoes grew in the ground, and he would shake the dirt off from it. That was creative to me, for me. But yeah, Susie, we had the can in the house. Did you know you're my favorite? You were our favorite too, Ellie. Someone asked if he sold to the public. I don't remember anything.
Well, I did. What I did was when at the garden behind the house, what I did was I took the cucumbers, the tomatoes, all of the vegetables, and I would give Mama a bag, and she would take it to UVA, and she would sell it to the nurses and the clients at UVA. And so that was my the initial job when I think I was about 10 or 12 years old. Because if I had to work in the garden, I figured I had to make some money. So Mama took the vegetables to UVA and sold them. And that's how I made my money. And then back in that day, that's when Nike first came out. And that's how I bought my first pair of Nike shoes.
Wow. That's great.
And I remember my dad, when I had to have a car for school, he sold a cow, and he would never let me live it down that he sold a cow to buy me a car for my internship.
All right. Before we get to the questions in the chat box, I just wanted to say, can you all tell us or share with us a funny or endearing memory about your dad?
I got it honestly. My dad loved to eat. So I got it honestly. He loved to eat. And so my sister and I joke often, obviously when we were older, we would go out, we would go to Charlottesville and bring some food home. And he would always go through, and whatever food we had left over, he was going to eat it. And he would often say, Ellie would ask, where's Simone? And Ellie would say, well, she's eating it. And he'd say, it figures. So, yeah, but my dad loved to eat. I always tell the story. The day he passed was he had just been eating some watermelon, which he loved watermelon. And so then he dozed off and he went home to be with God. But his last event was eating watermelon. So I got it honestly, but my dad loved to eat. He loves food.
I feel like that's a good way to go, eating watermelon. I mean, that's good to me. All right, so the questions in the box, we already addressed it. If he sold to the public, when was it that you got your first pair of Nikes?
That's when they first came out. I was in middle school at Walton Middle School. It was a pair. It was white with the blue stripe. Whatever day. Let's see. I graduated from Albemarle High School in 1984. So you subtract 4 years from that, and that's what 1980. And then what 1984. So I guess about 1978, when I was in middle school, that's when I got the Nike. I needed glasses at the same time, but Mama, she bought the glasses. Mom and Daddy bought the glasses, but I bought the Nike. So Mama said, "Son, we going to Kmart and get you these kicks, and you're gonna use them." I said, "Mom, I don't want those shoes from Kmart. I want some Nike." And so that's where I earned my money. That's how I got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's a great story. And the last question for you all is, did you all take your livestock to the yard in Hogwaller on Franklin? Or where did it?
Right now, it's all I know is it's off of 20. Now they changed where the wineries are, but it was off of 20 going away from Esmont, Scottsville on 20. You made the right on right where the BP station is now. There used to be a livestock market over there. It's no longer there anymore. But when we was growing up, it was a livestock market right behind that new. It's not new, but it is new. BP station off of 20, coming from Scottsville. And so, but that's where we sold, and they had great burgers. Cause I can remember we used to go there Saturday morning. They had great food, but they was like, we not spending the money. My mom was like, I got hamburger meat at home, but I wanted to get me a hamburger from the lifestyle market. But the lifestyle market is no longer there. And also I see a chat in here as well as 4-H family, but that also made me join FFA. What is it, FFA? Now, so I was a member of that. So it was also Alita and Simone was 4-H, but I was 4-H, and then we also had his daddy. He was really into FFA, Future Farmers of America, to carry on what he loved to do.
Yeah, and wasn't someplace in Nelson County that we used to go? Because I remember ice cream.
Yeah, we went to Nelson County, but I can't remember. We always went to the one in Charlottesville, so more than one in Nelson County. So, and I was the one doing all the work, so I couldn't remember everything because I was doing the stringent work. You and Alita was at taking them home waiting to collect the money. So that's all I remember.
But I remember that he used to go to with FFA. He used to take the boys from Albemarle High School. That's what he taught. And he would go to away of Blacksburg every summer for a week. They had a big convention, and they had these blue corduroy coats with a big patch with FFA on it. So, but yeah, he was really into FFA.
So speaking of 4-H and FFA, there's two questions. They'd like to know more about the Future Farmers of America, just in case folks don't know what that organization is. And then they'd also like to know if you all were the only African American kids in the 4-H and FFA program, or were there was there more diversity?
Radell, you said this was a real open forum. Okay, so y'all, Simone called me, so you want me to speak? Simone called me. I didn't know anything about this forum here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we went to Alita, Simone, and I went to Albemarle High School. Not Western Albemarle, but Albemarle High. And that, I think, Radell, correct me if I'm wrong, Alita, correct me if I'm wrong, Simone, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was more of a 6% Caucasian descent and 40% African American descent. It may, plus or minus any outliers out there, what you may have. But as far as 4-H and FFA, it was primarily Caucasian descent. But my dad was into it, so what he would do is he would get me and my cousin, who was my brother's, son of my dad's brother, Elliot Gardner, to join FFA. And then, so to be quite honest, we were the minority in that it was only made up of maybe 8 or 10% of African American who raise animals and to show at FFA, as well as learn different techniques to take care of different animals such as sheep and hogs and things of that nature. But during that time, we were a very small percentage, and it was maybe only 8 to 10% of African Americans participating in FHA, which you had a lot of fees and the corduroy jacket that Simone mentioned. Yeah, I had one, and I wanted one, but they was pretty much expensive. I mean, expensive in terms of African American income and what have you. But I got one. My daddy bought me one. My dad and mom bought me one. So, and it was very good. But it was a very small percentage of African Americans in these different programs because many people didn't know about it, and if they did know about it, it costs money. It costs a whole lot of money to be a part and to send your kids to camp, for 5 days, or to send your kids to some type of a class for 5 days to learn something about horticulture or to learn something about animals and agriculture. But that's what my daddy loved, so that's what he wanted me to do. That's what I did.
Yeah, just keeping it real. And
I'm sorry.
I'm going to get Ellie too to pop in here real quickly. And Cavanza, thank you for sharing about the you know, just the involvement with FFA. I was not in that program, but I was in 4-H. And yes, you know, we were minority students that were in it. We weren't the only. My mother was actually a 4-H leader for a short time. And there were other students before me. I know the Lux family was in 4-H as well. But, you know, when you went to the camps, you know, you went to the events, you know, as Cavanza said, you know, you're in that 5 to 10% range, but I didn't have any perspective outside of Esmont. So Ellie, if you wanted to just tell us on a broader basis across Albemarle County, you know, how 4-H looked. And I think Cavanza's pretty much said that FFA, you know, I've been in other states where that's a big deal, but it didn't seem to be a big deal in the Southern Albemarle, Esmont area, at least. But yeah, 4-H, if you want to share a little bit more.
Sure, I'm happy to. But first of all, I have to say hello to Simone and hello to Alita and Cavanza. I would not have recognized you by your voice because he's all grown up now. He's a grown-up man.
Yes, in all his glory, Ellie, in all his glory.
And I was lucky enough to, hi, Cavanza. I was lucky enough to see your cousin Hope at one of the, I'm doing vaccinations now with Blue Ridge, and I was lucky enough to see Hope, and I recognized her immediately. I went, there's the baby. Of course, we used to call Alita the baby too.
Yes. Hope is the baby now. Alita, she done graduated now. Hope's the baby now.
Hope's the baby now. But anyways, to talk about the 4-H program in Albemarle County, I was an extension agent from 1978 to 1988, and I came from Cleveland, Ohio, and I was a little Jewish girl coming to Albemarle County from Cleveland, Ohio. I knew nothing about cows and cooking. I knew nothing about 4-H, but I did get my degree in home economics, and they were looking for a home economist to run the 4-H program. So I, being a very young woman of like 25 years old, I'm more than double that now. I'm going to be 71, but so you can know how long ago that was. So I'm going to try to dig way down in there and remember. But actually, the Gardner family taught me everything I needed to know. We really counted on the families to help us get through. We weren't the experts. We were resources. And the 4-H program was really big. Now, this was before Boys and Girls Club, and I knew that we kind of shared the stage with FFA, although in 4-H, we didn't need money because it didn't cost anything. You know, when there was an event or a contest or a state congress, we would help provide the funds so that people who deserved to could go to public speaking contests, national, state, various contests. But I've got to tell you, Esmont, I know you're not supposed to have your favorites, and I sure hope that nobody else is on here that came from another 4-H club, but the Esmont Clovers were my favorite group. And
the Clovers, I remember, oh, that's what it was. That's what it started. 4-H Clovers. Yep, that's what it was. Yep.
Right,
I forgot that too.
Miss Coltrane, she was our leader. She was our leader.
Yes.
Ruth Brooks, Miss Eubanks. We had a great club down there at the New Green Mountain Church. That's where I first met Kelvin Reed all those years ago.
Yes. Yep. That's our child. That's our child.
Yep. And the person who pushed me into taking that job was Cindy Stratton. Cindy,
Yes.
I knew her before she married Glenn.
Yes, I remember that.
I was working at the Virginia Employment Commission when the job order came across my desk, and I said to Cindy, do you think I could do 4-H? And she went, yeah, you could do it. And that's why I decided I was going to be brave enough to take it and learn, and I learned so much from the Gardner family. When you talked about the percentage of African Americans versus others, it's so funny. Maybe I was young and I really didn't understand life back then, but I mean, I knew color existed. We didn't really think that, oh, here was a black 4-H club in southern Albemarle County. We just knew the Esmont Clovers was a terrific club. They were involved in everything. They were involved in public speaking. They were involved in demonstrations, we called it at the time. It became presentations and Share the Fun contest. We used to have so much fun, and going down to Green Mountain and just seeing all of the various things that they were doing. And what it did was it kept the kids busy. It kept the kids off the street. It kept them involved. It kept them working with other kids. They got to be with kids of all backgrounds and denominations being in the 4-H. And as I said, because it didn't cost any money, we could afford to do things that, maybe they couldn't do in other organizations. So I was blessed. I was truly blessed to be raised by the Gardner family.
Yeah.
Ellie, you said share the fun. So it was
Thank
six
you.
of us. My dad's brother, youngest brother, had 3 children, and then my dad had 3 children. So it was 6 of us, and we were raised like siblings. But like she said, there were demonstration and public speaking and a talent. The other one was talent show. None of us participated in the talent show. So that just shows you we were more hands-on. We didn't have the talent skills to participate in that. But I remember Jack and Cavansa with demonstration. They would raise animals. Am I right, Cavansa? Like a rabbit and stuff, and present that for.
We raised rabbits. We raised sheep, and we represented rabbits. We represented sheep. We represented hogs. We presented hogs. Yorkshire to be exact, because my dad would always make sure I knew the breed's name. He always made sure when we look at a pig, he was like, okay, what's that breed name? So we did Berkshire in 4-H at the presentation. So that was good.
Yeah.
I do need to mention somebody very special who's no longer with us, and that was William Coltrane. Remember William?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I his cousin Ryan Brown. I sent him the link. I hope he's on here now. But yes, William Coltrane. He helped me and my dad put the actual fences up for the cattle when we first started farming. So yes, and Daddy used to go to the store. He said, "What y'all want?" And then me and Coltrane would say, "Look, we want a Susie Q, to get something to eat because we was putting up fences." But yes. William Coltrane, yep, we do remember him very well.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie, for bringing up those reflections. Those good times, and as I think through it and just can think of the families that had hogs and, they would cut them up and everybody had a garden. There's still some gardens there. We need to talk a little bit more about the cattle. I'm not sure who still has those, but it's just interesting how as you go through the years that just some of these practices have changed, but, you can hold on to the memories. And Cavansa, you have a trap memory on the details, which we just appreciate that. And so you all have certainly presented a wonderful depiction of, I call him Kenton Sheffield, but your grandfather and my grandfather were brothers. And so we try to keep the name Kenton going through the family. My son is a Kenton as well. So I just so appreciate these reflections. We really do. Turning the corner, another family in Esmont, the Hudson family, well known for livestock, land, a lot of gardening. And my friend Tanisha Hudson is going to talk about not only her grandfather, but her great-grandfather. And I would just like to mention that her dad and I were just the best of friends and, playing basketball and just doing all those things. And, I just see all the things that you're doing today. And, a lot of times when I'm watching you on TV, I just get a little emotional with all of that because I know just how proud he would be. So, Tanisha, just take us into the lineage of the Hudson family and just how they have, kind of established that whole gardening world, so. Yeah.
Well, first off, thank you for that warm introduction. I'm sorry it brought tears to my eyes because all of them are gone. But it's tears of joy, so I'm gonna just continue on. First and foremost, my name is Tanisha Hudson. I'm a granddaughter of James Hudson and a great-granddaughter of Willie Hudson. And as he said, my dad, Darnell Hudson, he passed away in 2008. And my grandfather, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
My grandfather passed away in 2014. So I get a little worked up because they were my everything. So anyway, on to the program. My grandfather was a longtime sharecropper. My great-grandfather was a long time, I don't want to say sharecropper. Let me not say that. He was a long-time farmer because there's a difference. A sharecropper is a person that actually leases the land to run a farm. A tenant farmer who gives a part of their crops as rent. My great-grandfather, Willie Hudson, as you see in this picture, he owned his farm. They owned their land. Their land was right off of Route 6, and part of the land is actually off of Porter's Road. It actually touches like the back of New Hope Baptist Church. It kind of goes alongside from Route 6 and kind of wraps around towards Porter's Road. My cousin, Frances Johnson, she is Reverend Johnson's sister, R.A. Johnson, in case you all don't know him. I'm related to him. My great-grandfather, Willie, and his mom, Gladys, they were siblings. So Gladys Hudson, who then married a Johnson, was a sibling to Willie Hudson, who you see in this picture. I kind of got a little bit of information just from my grandfather telling me stories. And then I interviewed some people in my family who's still alive and older, my cousin Francis being one. And I got a couple good stories about my great-grandfather, Willie Hudson. Again, he was a farmer. He was very well known in Esmont. He was also one of the very few families in Esmont who had land even before the Reconstruction era. And I'm sure some of the Gardners know this from their family history as well. It was quite a few people in Esmont that actually owned their land. And one thing I feel like people discredit Esmont for, and I'm glad that the Gardner family brought this up with their father being a teacher, is that a lot of the Black teachers came from Esmont. And people really need to start giving the respect that Esmont deserves, because every teacher who has flowed through Burley School, or Jefferson School for that matter, has flowed through Esmont in some way, shape, or form. So we're gonna give a shout out to all the teachers and the leadership that came when schools were segregated, that came from Esmont, because Esmont was one of the only areas that housed most of the Black community at one point. And people don't like to tell that history, and I know gentrification happening, but we're gonna always remember that that was one place in Albemarle County that had a very prominent and strong middle class, even in the 1900s. So we need to give them the respect that they deserve. So my great-grandfather, Willie Hudson, was a farmer. My grandfather, James Hudson, and she has a picture of my great-grandfather, my grandfather, James, as well. He was also a farmer. He kind of continued the legacy of his family. And anybody that knows my grandfather from being in Esmont, you either seen him in a pickup truck or on a tractor riding up and down 6 Supporters Road. You had to have seen this man at some point in your, he might have even bush hog your land or just cut your grass, or the baseball games at the field on the corner of Porter's Road where they were going to build the park, but they didn't want to sell the land at the time. So it's so many, I could go on and on and on about my family history and the work that they've done just as far as farming. There's a lot of people. Shout out to Miss, was it Baloo Rhonda? Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brooks, but I think her name was it Mary Baloo, the lady that Grandpa used to train her horses.
Mary Elizabeth.
Is it Mary?
Somebody else on the,
my sister?
somebody help us with that.
I think I want to say her name was Mary Ballou, but I'll get it from my Aunt Valerie just to be
Okay.
safe. But he used to train her horses, and she lived up near Schuyler. So like, I just know I know where she lived at because we used to go there when I was a little girl. He raised horses. My granddad loved horses. Like, he would go crazy for his horses. He raised cattle. He had a huge garden on the side of his house. There was a little shed, and there was a side of his house, which is 2441 Irish Road, where it used to be. They sold it, unfortunately. But he had a huge garden in his house. I just remember being a little girl that my grandma, Helen, would always have a whole lot of vegetables stored, and they would can their stuff. I tell people all the time, it's different nowadays because we so used to go and getting a can of Green Giant, and they used to just go in their basement and pull out the canned goods that they had got from the crop from the year before. Like, I didn't know what it was like really to eat canned vegetables growing up in Esmont because she would cook all the time. And then when Michael Brown, started making the chicken, of course, then she would cheat a little bit and make the vegetables, but not the meat. So.
Hey, no, Felicia, hold on. We got Ryan Smurf Brown on the line, who is Michael Brown's cousin, who granddaddy, who helped Michael Brown start that chicken store and everything. He's on the line now. He's
my cousin too. I'm related.
Oh, your cousin too. Okay, yeah. Y'all related. So
right. I'm related.
He's trying to hide right now, but I invited him. But you see him on here. But anyway, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. I'm related to the Browns. So shout out.
Did you learn how to can at all? Did you learn how to can?
I didn't learn nothing about gardening. I can't even keep a plant alive. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. It's hard for me to even reap out a plant. So I'm gonna work on it because I know that's what my granddad would want, to keep his legacy going and so that I make him proud and happy. But I'm pretty sure that he's a little bit more proud of the work that I'm doing on the ground and on foot than me learning how to plant a tomato or something like that. So, okay. Grandpa, don't be mad. Charge my mind, not my heart. He know I mean well.
Denise, I remember. I'm sorry, when you said your granddad was on a tractor. It was when we got older and were driving. Your granddad, my dad, they were on a tractor. You'd hurry up and try to drive out before them because if you got behind them, it was a wrap.
You knew it was gonna be all day.
It was a wrap. You were gonna be there all day.
It was gonna be all day. He was really I gotta tell this story. I had got my air unit serviced in my house 2 years ago, and the guy that serviced my air unit from Fitch Services, he said, "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, are you related to the Hudsons and Esmont?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you related to Chamber?" He said Chamber, but I knew who he was talking about because my granddad's nickname was Chainer. So I said, "Yeah." He said, "Hold that thought." He said, "I got somebody that want to talk to you probably." He called his dad. This guy's name was Bradley Evans. And he called his dad on the phone. And they live in Schuyler. And his dad, Mr. Evans, got on the phone and he said, "Dad, I got Chamber Hudson granddaughter on the line." And they talk real Southern, okay? They thought I was from the city, the way I talk. So he got on the phone and he said, "You know, I still owe your granddaddy some money. We had an old bet on the Redskins game, and I'll be darned if the Redskins didn't win." He said, "So if you ever out in Schuyler, you come on out here and you pick that money up because I'm good on my bets. And I miss your granddaddy, the best bush hogger in Esmont." Rare occasion. That. Like, how often does that happen that you have somebody come service your house, your air handling unit, and they tell you that they know your family just based off of your last name? So that was one experience. And then recently, I was doing a Descendants Day with Jefferson School. And this is where you kind of go and you go in and you do your ancestry and you kind of learn about your family. And I knew a little bit about even the ones that were like before me, because people tell you, you know, and I still have some family members who are older that could give me the stories. But I didn't know that one, Alice Hudson, who was Willie Hudson's mom, Alice Hudson had children by a gentleman named Charles C. Harford, who happens to be the nephew of a member of parliament from England. And she went to England to marry Charles C. Harford in 1898. Now, Willie Hudson was already living because Willie was born in 1892. So 6 years after she had already had one son, she married Charles C. Harford. Charles C. Harford was a worker for the railroad at the time, and he lived in Richmond. Also had a wife in Richmond. So, you know, you like, oh, well, you know, back then, I guess they could just do whatever they wanted to do, right? She's Black, the other wife is white. But it's just good to learn your history, because I also knew that certain members of my family were never slaves, but I just found out while doing some research to speak tonight that Edward Hudson, who is Alice Hudson's father, Edward Hudson, and then Eliza was a swingler. I used to always wonder, like, Lord, I'm kin to the Browns, I'm kin to the swinglers. You know, you can't date nobody in the Esmont because you kin to everybody. So Edward and Eliza got married. Eliza was a swingler, and Edward was from DC. Edward Hudson was from DC on his vital records. But Edward was also a descendant of Thomas Jefferson. And I just found that out while doing research to even speak tonight. I had never known this. I did Ancestry probably a year and a half ago, and literally it just popped up when I like logged back in to find out some information on, I went to go find the actual land deeds, because I went to the Albemarle County Court to research how long this land had been in my family. And as far back as I got in the Albemarle County Court, it was as early as the early 1900s. So this house that you see here, Willie Hudson built this house. This is where he raised my grandfather and his siblings. So there was Fred, my grandfather, James, Ralph, Russell, Ben, Mary, Annie, Fanny, and then they had a sister that died from polio. So there was 9 children, and then one died from polio. And I can't think of her name, but I do have a picture of her. And Rosa gave me that history. So, but other than being a farmer, my grandfather worked at UVA. He worked in transportation for years at UVA. He married my grandmother, Helen Hudson. That's how I'm, you know, kin to the Browns, because of her. Shout out to my grandma Helen, and may she also rest in peace. So on the Hudson side, there's the Hudsons, there's the Swinglers, and there's the Fagans that we're related to. And then on my grandma Helen's side, there's the Jordans, the Browns, the Eubankses. Gosh, I don't know. Look, the list goes on. I just say I'm kin to everybody, probably kin to the Gardners too. So hey, cousins, the Carries, the Scotts, our cousin Phyllis Laundrie, of course, my great aunt Virginia Randolph. That was my grandma Helen's sister. They were prominent members of New Hope Baptist Church. If you Google the Scottsfield Museum and you look at like the cemetery, because they have a little, if I Google like Willie Hudson's last name, they have a Scottsfield Museum link that pulls up, and it's everybody that's been buried at New Hope, which is the same for most of the churches out in Esmont. I can remember as a little girl going to New Hope and thinking like, man, does this church ever end? I mean, it felt like you was in there all day. But as a kid, you think it's all day, and it's really just 2 hours. Miss Angelina was my choir director when I was a little girl at New Hope. She was my choir director, and I always tell the story, which has nothing to do with farming, but everything to do with Esmont history. I remember being a little girl and being so exhausted on the choir. We had an engagement at New Hope that I fell asleep on the choir stand, and she still talk about that like to this day. I just fell asleep. I was so exhausted. But it's a lot of good memories. My grandfather used to cut the grass at New Hope, and other churches too. I'm pretty sure New Green Mountain. I don't want to say it wrong, but is it Mount Pleasant or is it Mount Pleasant?
Girl, you know the name of it.
Look,
You said it correct. Mount Pleasant. You know the name Mount Pleasant.
I be going off memory sometimes. You know, when I'm riding through King, it's like I can remember who lived where. It's like, okay, this is Ann house, and this is so-and-so house, and these the Jordans. I remember the Jordan family. We went to a wedding in their front yard. And then the Gardners, when you get to Gardner Lane, and the Raglins, Nia and Carlos' mom. And, you know, then you get further down by the church, it's like, okay, Miss Scott. I love Miss Scott. She was the best Sunday school teacher ever. Miss Scott house, my Aunt Virginia house, the Grays further down, Porter's past New Hope, Miss Mary Curry house on 6. Now I'm back on 6. The Fagans, Miss Mary Curry house, my grandfather's house, my Uncle Ralph house, the Swinglers across the road, and then the Swinglers used to live across the yard from us. And then further on down, I mean, I can literally like place everybody's home out in Esmont. I don't know if my grandfather ever sold stuff to stockyards. I'm pretty sure he did, because one thing he taught me as a little girl is that as long as you had 2 hands and 2 feet, you could be a millionaire and make as much money as you want. And my granddad never finished school because he always worked. And I think the one thing that we all get from him is that, you know, it's a lot of things that you can do to make money, but you got to love what you do. And I think when you love what you do, you continue to work. Was it 2 weeks before he died? I think 2 weeks before he died, he was still on the tractor. He might have been driving 5 miles per hour, okay, on the tractor, but he was still working. So,
did you ever get a sense of how much land the Hudson family had? That, like, you know, Cobanza and them mentioned, you know, the 62 acres and some others. Did you ever hear anybody talk about the acreage?
I never really calculated that, because I think in order to do that, you would have to, I know I went back, I know it's at least 10 that I know of, but that was 10 that was still in the care of Hudson's. I don't know what's been sold. The last piece that was from as far back as I went, which was in the like late 1800s, was the piece that my granddad actually lived on, which is 2441 Irish Road. So that house stayed, like that land, not the house itself, but that land stayed in the family, because before my grandfather bought it, that's where Reverend Johnson family house was, which is equivalent to the family house that she just showed in the image. That house is probably the last piece that we still have in our possession. And that house was built, it had to be late 1800s, early 19. I don't have the record with me because I'm not at home where I have all the records concealed, but that's the last actual piece with a living structure from back then that's still on it. Now, my grandfather, them, I think, has the actual oldest piece, because where his house was built, that's where their parents grew up. So, and then the land was split off. So you had my Uncle Ralph's house where him and Rosa lived. You have the house that she just showed in the image. That's where my grandfather them were raised as kids. But then their parents were built on the land across the field, which is where my grandfather ended up building his house at. And that was the oldest piece. So, I mean, I think it's probably all right around the same time. But then you had the baseball field, and I haven't really done the history of the baseball field because they sold it in early 2000s. Probably like the latter 2000s, like 05, 09, whenever the park was built. They sold it like 2 years before they built Simpson Park, because they asked to build the park there initially, and they didn't want to sell it at the time. But no, I don't know the exact. That's some homework I could definitely write down and do, find out how much acreage. But
Tanisha, I was thinking how Cabasa, didn't Daddy and Mr. Hudson do work together, do some farming together? And I was saying how the farmers in Esmont work together.
Yeah, they partner for the field when they lease, so they would grow corn and hay for the cattle and corn for the hogs.
So working together as Black farmers, in Esmont, coming together, having to do what you got to do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And people still do it today, though. That's the one good thing I can say about the Esmont community, is that it's so close-knit that, if you need something done, you got somebody to call. And shout out to my dad, Darnell. I mean, he had his great, amazing qualities, right? He might move you. He gonna break a leg or two on your furniture, but he gonna get you moved in. So shout out to my dad too. I mean, it was nothing to just ride up to the cross. We call it the crossroads. Well, that's what they call it. I'm too young to call it anything. But the crossroads right at 6th and Porter's, it was nothing to just get to that stop sign coming off Porter's Road, and you see Darnell or Conner or Swahili or anybody if you needed some type of work done. I mean, you could always find people that would do a day's work. And, of course, it's so many things about Esmont that I remember as a kid. It felt like an hour drive when I was 6. And now that I'm grown and I drive out there all the time myself, it's, you realize it's really only 20 minutes, but it feels like an hour when you're young. But as a kid, I just remember like my grandfather them they had fruit trees. It was a plum tree right in the back of his yard, and the plums would fall on the ground and be right at the basement door. And growing up, I was like, man, I don't never see this type of stuff in Charlottesville. It was new to me to see certain things as a kid, because I wasn't accustomed to that country lifestyle. And as you can see, I've never really embraced it, because I don't know nothing about, growing anything. I'm trying. I'm gonna start out with a little tomato pot and see how that goes.
That's a deep question right there in the chat. What do the descendants think of the legacy of Black farming today? Well, that's what we're trying to renew, because these stories of grandfathers and fathers, and there's a lot of pride that comes from just listening to the sense of ownership, and as folks said, multiple revenue streams that come into the household by working, additional working, selling cattle, selling vegetables. What do the descendants think of the legacy of Black farming? What do you guys think about Black farming when you hear the word?
I think it's important to get it back for many reasons. I think it's really, definitely want to make a commitment to learning how to do that. And if this pandemic didn't teach us anything, it definitely taught us that, listen, we've been so accustomed to being spoiled to the point that we're so used to having everything, that if we were to run out tomorrow, how will we function? How will we maintain? How would you get meat if the grocery stores didn't have it? How would you get vegetables if you didn't go to a grocery store? And I can only speak for me, and you know, me being at the age that I am now, I wish that I would have paid a little bit more attention to my grandfather doing this work, not realizing that he already had it figured out. They knew how to survive. If something was to just stop tomorrow, they could still function. They could still make money. He didn't depend on UVA to pay his bills all the time, because if UVA had shut down tomorrow, guess what? He knew he could go out here and land work, cutting somebody's grass or planting their corn or tomatoes or potatoes or cabbage or whatever. He knew that he could survive. And I think, to me, what we need to understand, you know, the younger generation, what we need to understand is that we need to always maintain a vision of, it could be here today and gone tomorrow, and how will you function? And you know, a part of me that's like a part of me, I don't want to say that we should adapt to struggle, because as Black people who come from descendants of slavery, we should never feel like that we're accustomed to struggle. And there's a difference between struggle and being prepared. And I think we have to remove the thought of struggle, and we have to think about that what they went through allowed us to be prepared in a way that we can prepare ourselves, that if the world was to just stop tomorrow, that we should be able to function. And that white America should accept that the only reason why that they're in a space that they're a little bit more ahead is because of the struggle that our ancestors put them in that position so that they can win regardless. And we're just now kind of coming around to our senses on, we need to prepare our offspring behind us to be prepared in case struggle comes back, right?
Right, and I agree.
I make sense saying that.
Yeah, I understand. It's from my standpoint, from my dad's standpoint. You know, yeah, it's black and white and farmers, this and that, and what have you. But my dad would always say, he was like, okay, when I know a person, I know where they come from, no matter what color they are, no matter what profession they did. So you need to understand that person for who they are. That way you know how to deal with them. But when I was coming up and we were doing all this, it really didn't matter. I mean, yeah, in my mind, I was like, race didn't matter, but it did matter behind the scenes. However, we had help for no matter what color, nationality, what you have you. If your cows was out, I don't care if the person was purple, they would call you, say, yo, your cows out, man. Let me help you get your cows in. And so, you know, and I truly understand it. I know it's a race line there somehow, but at the same time, you know, you gonna say if we sit there and dwell on that, then we won't get anywhere. And so what Daddy used to do is Daddy was like, okay, let's go ahead and keep moving and make friends, and we learn from different races, you learn from different nationalities. How do you learn so much from different people because of different changes? And so that's what Daddy used to always do. He didn't care. Daddy didn't care. He was like, okay, I just need to understand where your mindset was. He didn't care what race you were. He didn't care what you know, whatever. Even though he was a part of segregation, he was a part of Burlington. What was it, Rydell? What was it, Burley? What was it? What that high school they had they couldn't go to? Burley or whatever what the school was. Yeah. Burley. And so he was like, okay, they making us segregate now. But you know, to my thing is that It's COVID. Since COVID, I don't care who you are. Everybody like, okay, we need help. No matter what race, color, creed you are. Like, look, you got some vegetables? Yeah. Let me trade some eggs for some cucumbers. Or let me trade some cheese or some goat cheese because you made some sheep cheese because you raising sheep, or some sheep wool because we had to cut the wool. You were like, let me trade that for X, or let me trade that for Y. It really didn't matter, what creed, but I understand what Denisha's saying at the same time. You also got to keep moving, even though you always got to keep moving, no matter what the reality is. That's
right.
my take.
Let me put a plug in now for the new book that just came out, The Unforgettable Burley High School. It's a wonderful book that the Burley Varsity Club has put out. Esmont High School is featured in it, along with the Albemarle Training School. And I bring up the Albemarle Training School because it's right out there with Riverview Farm in the Ivy Creek Nature area. It all goes together. There is a landmark now, Hydraulic Road, that recognizes the Albemarle Training School, and the Riverview Barn is now a nationally recognized land site. And so these conversations that we're having, and it is conversations, and when we go out and visit, you will hear the same story with Mr. Greer and with Conly and with Mr. Carr. And, they're doing multiple things, and they're farming on the side, and they're working, and they own all of this land that they're producing this food off of. And this is like post-Reconstruction. And then it comes into the early 1900s. So, as we begin to spend more time out at Riverview, you're going to hear these same stories that have been shared throughout the whole evening when we started. And you're going to hear it again when we talk about Mr. Butler here in just a few minutes, because, he's working with the Extension Agency. He's got these cows, he's got this garden, he's the first African-American on the Board of Supervisors. And, to Tanisha's point, it's like, my wife was asking me, like, why are you getting up at 4:30 and 5 o'clock? And it's like, because I got a lot to do, right? But it's like, you just got to keep moving. But I think about like the ancestors, and it's like, they got up before the sun and they went to bed late, and it's just the way it worked. So, yeah.
And might I just add, that it's also telling the younger generation, like, we got to hold on to grandma and grandpa's house. We have got to stop selling land and selling houses. It's one thing if you live in a subdivision and you attach to somebody, I get it. But when you have land, there's one thing that they will not make any more of, and that is land. Land is becoming extinct. Like, you're not going to be able to create more land. So when it's gone, it's gone. If you have it and you still have family land, hold on to it and make sure that when you pass, that you have it somewhere written that your children can't sell it, and that you maintain it and keep it in your family, because that's what they did back then, and we got to get back to that.
Hey, okay, Tanisha. Yeah, I know you said just like my sister Alita. We get it, Alita. I mean, Tanisha. I got it, Alita. That's what she say all the time. We got it. We with you wholeheartedly. Okay, I don't believe we got it.
That's not too convincing for me.
Okay.
I want to thank y'all. I want to thank y'all for having me and honoring my family, and shout out to you, Ed. That's my dad's best friend. So shout out to you for including the Hudson family and remembering us. And shout out to whoever put in the chat that my granddad trained for Miss Betsy Bowe. She loved my granddad. He maintained her garden all the time, and I'm sure that she would speak highly of him. So thanks for name dropping. I could not remember her name to save my life.
Yeah.
I was ready to call my Aunt Valerie.
Thank you all so much. And thank all of you all on the line for just sticking with us and just listening to these conversations. It's the interest here is just incredible. And so we appreciate you all sitting and listening and contributing as well. Mr. Butler, and I do want to mention, and please help me all, I know Miss Nan Roberts is on the line as well. She is the niece for Mr. Butler, and Ellie Tucker, who just told you all that she was a young extension agent here in Charlottesville from Cleveland, Ohio. And Ellie, you tell us a little bit more about how you worked with and for Mr. Butler, and then we're going to carry this conversation on into the next level. Hang with us, everybody. Ellie, go ahead. Thank
you so much, Ed. Tanisha, I have to say I was so moved by your talk, and I know your daddy and your granddaddy and your great-granddaddy are smiling down on you right now, and thank you for furthering and remembering him and helping us remember them as well. So I really wasn't prepared to talk tonight because I've been running vaccines back and forth to Nelson County, and as you may have seen at the beginning of the call, I was still driving the vaccine back and made it back to my home just in time to hear the Gardners' wonderful stories. But I do want to honor Mr. Butler because he was truly one of the best bosses I've ever had, if not the best boss I ever had. As I said, I was a young woman coming from a major city, didn't know anything about farming. I didn't know much about kids, to tell you the truth, because I never babysat and never had anything to do with that. And Mr. Butler had the knack of making me feel so comfortable immediately. He had a laugh, and I'm sure that if you knew Mr. Butler, you would know what I'm talking about. You can see the smile on his face in this picture. Well, imagine him just heaving and laughing. His whole body laughed when he laughed. And you couldn't help but to laugh along with him because he was such a genial, such a kind, such a gentle man. And my father would make special trips down from Cleveland to see Mr. Butler because he thought so highly of Mr. Butler. And he used to send me little notes to give to Mr. Butler just to say how much he held him in esteem. Mr. Butler was an incredible man. And you can read, some of this that's written on the wall. But I had talked to Dave Vaden, who was our farm management agent, because Dave had a lot more day-to-day dealings with Mr. Butler. Mr. Butler was our unit manager, and so he was my boss. He was the big boss of extension in our county and in our city also, because we've soon combined the city and the county program. So he became the unit chairman for both of the programs. There was probably not a more highly respected person than Mr. Butler. When he got serious, you see the smile on his face, but when he got serious, it was kind of like you could hear a pin drop. Nobody spoke, nobody said a word, because you just wanted to hear what Mr. Butler had to say. And it was always something important. It was always something good. It was always something kind. And I asked him in one of our meetings, I've never worked with kids before. How am I going to do this? And he said to me, he kind of patted me on the back, and he said, there, young lady. All you have to do is listen. And that made a huge difference to me. All of a sudden, I came away from being the teacher to being the student. And when I talk about the Gardners raising me, I just am not saying that. I listened. I listened to all the Gardners, to Kenton and to Jack and to Elliot and Cavanza and Simone and Alita, Evelyn, and the Gardners were a very special family. Mr. Butler allowed me to be part of the program. I knew when I went to a meeting with Mr. Butler, he wasn't just introducing me to be nice. He was introducing me because he felt like I needed to know these people. And so we would drive around the county. I would go to work and we would be in his truck. When I talk about being in his truck, I'm talking about being in his truck like that. He had a pretty heavy foot on that gas pedal. But he would tell me about how early he would get up in the morning, and I would say, how do you get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning and you're still functioning, let's say, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Well, little did I know he would still be there in the office at 10 o'clock or 10:30 at night, still, you know, maintaining, doing the paperwork, which he hated to do, but he did it. And I knew about the pigs. I knew he had pigs because he talked about the pigs a lot. But I didn't know he had cattle. And Dave did tell me that he had about 15 cows, I believe. I wish Dave Vaden was on because I had made notes when I was speaking to Dave about Mr. Butler, and he gave me bullet points, and I can't really fill in the bullet points, but I'm hoping that maybe somebody can fill in the bullet points. There was something about the Christiansburg Color Institute, CCI, and if anybody knows about that, that would be a really wonderful thing to hear about, because I believe that that was an important organization for Mr. Butler. And I remember another story that he told about, instead of having meetings in rooms and things like that, he would want people to meet him at Timber Lakes. So we knew that whenever a meeting was called, it would be at Timber Lakes. That was kind of the central place for him. But I thought that maybe a way for people who didn't know Mr. Butler, I'm assuming people did know Mr. Butler. Obviously, you hear the name Baker Butler Elementary School, and I was so pleased that they decided to name the elementary school after Mr. Butler and John Baker, because they were both really fine men. But there was actually, Mr. Butler died in 2003, and it was a very interesting occurrence because there was a visitation at Bell Funeral Home, and I went in the middle of the afternoon, and I kind of knocked on doors and opened doors. There was nobody around, but I just kind of opened doors and found myself in different rooms, and all of a sudden, I found myself in the room with Mr. Butler, and I didn't know what to do. Do I stay there? Do I leave? And I decided, what would Mr. Butler do? He would have stayed, and I stayed with him and talked to him and told stories and memories for about 20 minutes. And it was amazing. Mr. Butler was very important to me, as you can tell. It wasn't just a small thing. But the legislature in 2004 actually gave a proclamation. And if you'll indulge me just for a minute, because it does bring up some of the things about Mr. Butler that I really didn't know or didn't think about. He was from Gordonsville. He was a pioneer leader in Albemarle County for many years, died on March 9th, 2003. He was a native of Woodville. Mr. Butler grew up in Rappahannock County, served his country in the U.S. Army, and earned his degree from Virginia State University. He had a long and distinguished career as an extension agent and became the first African-American chief of an extension service office in Virginia. Whereas Mr. James Butler retired from extension in 1979, the same year he won a National Boss of the Year award. And then he was elected to the Board of Supervisors as the first African-American member. He gave generously of his time and talent to a variety of worthwhile organizations, especially 4-H, Piedmont Virginia Community College, the NAACP, the Rivanna Volunteer Fire Company, and St. John Baptist Church. That's just a little bit about Mr. Butler. And as I said, I wish that I knew more about the farming aspect, because I know that that's what the talk is about. But all I can say is Mr. Butler, and I know that he had a couple of adopted children. I remember his talking about Mo, and I believe Ed said that there was another adopted son as well. But he loved his family. He loved Nellie. Nellie loved him. And just being in their presence was such an honor. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk about him. So thank you, Ed. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, and I know Gene Mary and his brother, I'm forgetting his name, he's younger. Gene and Kenny Mary, they were also, some of the adopted children. Thank you for reading that proclamation from the General Assembly. Mr. Butler was not a native of the area, but obviously he's from Rappahannock County, and he moved in and then just became integrated in the fabric, with the county. And we have Nan Butler Roberts on the line, and she is a niece of Mr. Butler. And I spoke with Nan several times on the phone and just enjoyed the conversation. She's forgiven me for calling her this morning and saying we're doing this tonight. But she's from the Culpeper area, and I know you visited with Nellie and Mr. Butler a lot. Just share with us a little bit more about the Butler family as you knew your uncle and aunt. As a family member. Ellie has certainly given us she's given us the picture as an employee. And, it's just warm feelings and thoughts all in that as, you're kind of like trying to figure out how do I do this job? And, to have a boss that you actually like and trust, that's a big deal. So it really is. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Roberts. Help us out this evening.
Well, good evening to everyone, and I appreciate so much this opportunity. I may go in and out because I don't have the best Wi-Fi service out here in the country. But
we do.
But I did appreciate listening to what I could hear, particularly about the Hudson family. I think I jumped on the call about that time. And thank you, Ms. Tucker, for that overview of my uncle. And that's really interesting. You have that proclamation. So that's kind of a deep dive there. Thank you so much for pulling that out. Well, I used to tell people that being with Aunt Nellie and Uncle James and some of the activities that they were involved in, they had so many people come in and out of their house. They didn't have children of their own, but I think at some point the count was over 100 kids that matriculated through their home at some point. Either they stayed for a short time or a long time, or they just opened their home to children of all ages. And I would tell folks that it was like being at the Kennedy compound without the money. So, they had a beautiful place there on Gordonsville Road, 50+ acre farm and working farm. And when you say that he got up early, yes, he got up early to make sure that the farm animals were taken care of. Of course, my aunt helped with all of that. And I want to let you know that Aunt Nellie was not local. She was from Baltimore. So she was a city girl. Oh. So she had to learn a lot. She had to learn a lot. But I heard someone say that Uncle James loved her, and certainly she loved her James. She used to, interestingly, her name for him was Jane. The ES never got onto it. It was J-A-M, Jane, or J-A-M-E. She had a nickname for him. But if you went by their house, they were going to offer you something to eat. He also cured his own hams. Now he had a little bit different recipe than my father did. My father used mainly sugar. It was a sugar cure. And my Uncle James used mostly a salt cure. But either way, it was some delicious Virginia country ham. And if you went by their house, you were probably going to get served some ham biscuits, homemade biscuits that Aunt Nellie made, along with her delicious chicken salad, which she took that recipe to her grave. Nobody knows really what was in that chicken salad, but it was delicious. And during the summertime, they would have huge events. And a lot of times it was just spur of the moment. I mean, people would come by and it would turn into a party. You had croquet, they had a croquet set. They also liked to play, they were big bridge players. They liked to play cards, and they liked baseball. And a lot of times, and I heard someone talk about the Esmont team. Esmont had a great team. And also the great team in Rappahannock was the Sperryville Tigers. And I just want to let you know that is Tanisha here? Still, yeah. Esmont used to get beat by Sperryville all the time.
Tanisha, you hear that? I think she left the room. So we never heard that, Robert. We thought we won all the games, but thank you for setting us straight.
Oh,
okay?
no.
All right.
Oh no, the Tigers were the team. The Tigers were the team to beat, and anybody around
we need
will
to
tell you
verify
that.
Excuse me, but we need to verify that. You know, I mean, I was born when the ballpark was down there, and then the crossroad that Tisha was talking about from Porter's Road to on 6th to the corner used to be a baseball park there. But we need to confirm that. I understand what you're saying, but hold tight. We need to confirm that. Keep going. Keep on going.
Well, you can ask the historian, the young man who's written a book about Black baseball in Virginia, and he will verify that the top team was the Sperryville Tigers. So you ask Mr. Howard about that next time.
That is true. That book is called Sunday's Coming, right? The book is called Sunday's Coming?
Sunday's Coming.
Sunday's Coming
yes.
by Mr. Howard, yes.
All right, I'll look at that. I'll read that then.
Yeah, so they were just really, really community-minded people. It was all about the community. When Miss Tucker said that there were some long hours, one of my family members remarked one time that Nellie and James go to more meetings than I know about. And, you know, day after day, it was 4-H, or it was Rivanna, or it was St. John, or the NAACP, or it was another organization that they worked with. Well, of course, the Scouts, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. And there was another organization that they worked for, and I can't think of it right now. But yeah, they were just very community-minded people, and they just wanted to help somebody else along the way, and they opened up their home to do that.
You shared that Mrs. Butler was from Baltimore, but do you know, because this question came up earlier with you know, the Gardner family as well as the Hudson family. Do you know anything about Mr. Butler's parents in Rappahannock as to, you know, farmers, just anything?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I knew my grandparents well. John and Minnie Butler. John Butler was a farmer as well. He made so many things. He had a garden. Uncle James had a garden as well every year. My father was a gardener. His brother. Daddy had my mother canned, Aunt Nellie canned. They froze a lot of things as well. And of course, on the farm, they had, somebody said that he had cattle. And I don't remember the cattle, but I remember, of course, he had chickens, had a chicken house there. And I've been to the chicken house a number of times and collected eggs, and we had to wash the eggs. Went there during the summer, and sometimes just stop by there, and they would be gathering eggs, so you would help do that. And I want to say too that they used to sell the eggs down at the they had a long driveway, and they would put the eggs out in cartons, and they had a little box there to collect a donation. I think it was, I don't know, 25, 50 cents for a dozen of eggs. And it was on the honor system. They would put the eggs out. People would come by, buy the eggs, put money in the little container, and go on about their business. I mean, another thing, for a very, very, very long time, they never locked their house. They would leave out of the house, and they never locked the door. And we've been by there. My father, we've been in the area. I don't know, we might go be somewhere for a church service or be in Charlottesville for something, and come back by the house and go in, leave a note, get a cold drink, and leave. But back to my grandparents. My grandfather John, he was a farmer, but he was I heard somebody say, I guess he was a sharecropper farmer for many years. And my grandmother was much younger than he was. There was 8 children, 6 of them survived. There were two babies that died. One of the babies was a couple of days old. Another one was a couple of months old. But the rest, the other 6 survived. And then the very youngest son, he had served in the military, served in Korea, came home and was working for about 6 months, and had a single car crash, and he passed away in that single car crash. And that was actually, that happened the year before I was born, almost exactly a year. He died July 1955, and I was born July 1956. So they were hardworking people. My grandmother worked domestic work. And I just found out a couple of years ago, because there was a display, a women's exhibit that was hosted down at the Carver Center in Rapidan, where my Aunt Nellie worked for many years teaching cosmetology. As you know, that she was a cosmetologist. And she actually taught at Piedmont. It was called Piedmont Technical Center, but it was the old regional Black high school, George Washington Carver Regional High School. And it served 4 counties: Culpeper, Madison, Rappahannock, and Orange. And what I found out with this exhibit is that my grandmother was an entrepreneur. My father, everybody talked about, there were about 4 establishments in Rappahannock County for African Americans before integration. And the place that my father had was called Horseshoe Inn. Now, a lot of people still know that name because it was a home / dance hall / restaurant / convenience store it was all in one. And it was always attributed to my parents, my mother and father, Howard and Dorothy Butler, who is James's younger brother. But in the research, it was found out that actually my grandmother's name was on the list for the business license. So actually, it was my father and my grandmother who owned that establishment way back in the day. It was opened in 1950. Daddy opened in 1950. So at some point, the other interesting thing about my grandmother and grandfather, they were divorced many years ago, and that was something that really didn't happen with the African American community, and so that sort of sparked interest from the curator of the exhibit. she found it interesting that my grandparents were divorced. It was very amicable. They didn't seem to argue about it because we would have family gatherings, and it would be, "How do, John? How do, Minnie?" They were very civil about it. So, and she had her house, he had his house, and when we would have family gatherings, he would come to those family gatherings, and it was all copacetic. I also found out that I think the reason that my grandmother didn't like the so-called farming life, because she had worked domestically, and so she had kind of seen the better side of life, and she didn't. And what happened with their family, I found out, is that they had to move every year. They would have like 1-year contracts, and they would have to move every Christmas at the end of the year. And it became a very, very difficult time for her children. And I think she wanted more stability for her children, because for 50 plus years, she hosted a big Christmas family dinner at her home every year. And after she passed away, then we started a rotation with the siblings, with her children, her offspring. So my mother and father would host 1 year, Aunt Nellie and Uncle James would host 1 year. Her daughter in Stanton would host 1 year. And then after all of them passed away, then we started doing it with the third generation. So they were hardworking people. It has been said there's not a lazy butler anywhere.
Do you know if there is Butler land still in Rappahannock that is sort of in the family?
Well, yes. Interestingly, that Tanisha would talk about that, and I try. It's tough. I do have a couple of pieces that I'm trying to hang on to. My grandfather's house, there in the middle of Sperryville, is still family owned. A piece on my mother's side, in Little Washington. Some of the people know about it as Little Washington, Virginia. We still try to hang on to a piece there. And the place that was called Horseshoe Inn, the family still owns that as well.
Yeah. Did you mention that were there some other siblings? I know your dad and Mr. Butler were brothers. Was there anyone else in the family that kind of took to this farming track that Mr. Butler just passionately about to the degree that Mr. Butler did?
Well, there were just the three brothers. The fourth brother passed away, and then there were 2 daughters. Uncle James was the oldest, and then his sister Irene, then a sister Elise, and then there were the two babies that I mentioned that passed away. One was a couple of days old, and the other one was a couple of months old. And then my father, Howard, and then Lewis was the next oldest, and then the baby was Walter, and Walter was the one who was killed in the accident. So there were 3 brothers. My Uncle Lewis, when the divorce came with his parents, he was about 6 years old. And my grandmother took him to stay with a family. We're not really certain what the family was, but that family took him in and loved him and nurtured him, and ended up granting him land. And he was able to build his own home, as well as a home for 2 of his daughters, his 2 daughters. He had 3 children. And they live in Washington, Virginia now. My father, I suppose, was the one who took up some of the farming. He had, Daddy raised hogs and for a while. And Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving would always be hog killing time. That's when they decided to butcher, and everybody would come together and they would, make the sausage and cut the meat and make sure they put the curing elements on it, the salt and so on and so forth.
Oh,
and they would put that up.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Wait a minute. You forgetting? No. First steps is to hang the hog, kill the hog, hang him, and then put him in the hot boiling water in a tub, in a cast iron clawfoot tub. Boil them so you get the skin, to get the hair off, and then you proceed to cut them pieces up, to spin them all to make sausages, hams, and shoulders and what had barbecue. So I just want to interject. Excuse me, but I want to interject. Excuse me.
Very
my mother
good.
would.
Very good.
Yeah, my mother would talk about this after things.
But they gave me the job they gave me to do. Go ahead.
No, I've only heard the hog scream once in my life. From my uncle had the cows, but
right there, come on, right there. You on there with the knife scraping. Come on, right there. Come on, right there. Shoot the hog in the head with a 22 rifle. Once you shoot him, you cut him in the neck, let him bleed, and then you soak him in hot water, boiling water made with fire. Then take the knife and scrape all the hair off. And after you scrape the hair off, that's when you start to process the hog. But I'm gonna be quiet because it's getting late tonight. Y'all be quiet.
I know. Well, we went 2-hour conversation. We got 7 minutes,
it has been said that the only thing that you can't use on a hog is a squeal. You can everything else you can use.
Amen. My daddy used to eat the hog maws, everything, hog maws, hog jaws, liver, heart, you name it, we ate it. Egg with rice.
Yeah, exactly. Mountain oysters.
And for those
mountain oysters.
For anybody,
that's called mountain oysters.
Oh,
that's called mountain oysters.
They're just called chitlins. They're just called chitlins.
No.
And for anybody, that won't eat
chitlins. We love chitlins. We eat chitlins today. We can't find them because of COVID. We eat chitlins, but we also, when Dave was living, we ate hog maws.
Chitlins, you're not educated.
Exactly. Hog maws. But see, hog maws are different than chitlins. We ate the hog maws.
I will tell you all this.
Now I know it's just, they were the best. But
I will tell you all this.
Well, my job when I became a teenager is I could, through 4-H, and my mother, I was able to sew. So I made the sausage bags. Daddy That was my task.
Okay, yes.
That was my task.
Well, I'm going to call you because if I get some more, I'm going to get Lisa to send you something because I need to get some more skins. I'm going to get you to go ahead and sew them for me so I can make some sausage, smoke some sausage at my house. Okay,
I probably shouldn't share this in this group, but my wife is from DC, but her family is from Carolina. So when we met, and I have never ate chitlins ever. And
I am ashamed. I'm ashamed of you. I'm ashamed of you right there.
I know you are.
I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed.
Something that smells like that.
Right there. We are cousins right there. We blood cousins. I'm ashamed.
My wife's family said, "Are you sure you're from the South?" And I said, "I am, but I've never ate."
I don't know about you, Mr. Brooks. I don't know.
I agree. Yeah.
Simone, I'm going to cut him off, Simone. I'm going to cut him off. I'm cutting him off right now. I'm going to cut him off.
I admitted that. So
I'm shaking my head. I'm shaking my head on you, Mr. Brooks. I don't know.
Text message a few weeks ago that Jack had found some, or Shirley had them, and he fried them. I had never seen him fried before, but he battered and he fried them.
And Simone want to bring some of Christmas, but Simone want to bring some mixed mess to mama house claiming they was chitlins, but it wasn't chitlins. It was chitlins and all kinds of mixed pork meat. It wasn't chitlins.
It was awful.
I'm a digress. I digress.
Kim wants to know, what is scrapple? What is scrapple?
The best in the world.
Scrapple is everything else. Everything else. That's what you throw in the pot.
But and they make it solid, so it's everything.
It's pig brains, it's hog jaws, it's all the little pieces that don't get thrown away. But what happens is that the pig, it puts out so much gelatin, if you will. Mm-hmm. Once it gets cold, it's molded. And once it's molded, they put it in slices, put it on the frying pan, heat it up with some scrambled eggs, some cheese eggs, Brussels grape. You good to go. It's the best in the world. Yeah. But I digress. I'm gonna be quiet.
Yeah. So what's obvious here with Miss Roberts sharing and everybody through this, Tanisha didn't get too much into the whole gardening thing, but there's a physical part to the gardening, and then there's a living part to the gardening. So you've heard the stories about the canning. You heard the stories about the hog killing, right? And the gory details that go with that. But, the getting up in the morning, the catching the cows when they get out. That's all a part of this thing called farming. And so today, when we talk about farming, I get a romanticized picture of it, black farming, wineries, all of that. But what we've gone through tonight with this conversation is that there's a real side to this, right? There's the hard work, there's the long hours. But there is I can't quite say the word, maybe someone else can say it better, but there's something about this work process with farming that does give you this sense of accomplishment, ownership. What did Tanisha call it? This can do, this survival thing. So, all the food prices is going up like crazy, right? So we got a community garden down there in Esmont that we're working with. And, I'm getting back into it because I was at 4-H and I used to make sure that for a while, no weeds could ever get in my garden, right? But you know what? We used to use 7 dust to kill all of the bugs. And so now I'm learning, right? We're not gonna put 7 dust on our food anymore. And everything's gonna be organic. I mean, like today I was out in the, I never heard of compost till I was adult. I mean, I never heard the word, but we got 5 compost boxes out there. And I was turning them over today a little bit. So it's I'm into this, right? And so I'm hoping that with the sharing of these stories, the good, bad, and the ugly, that there's something coming out of this whole thing with farming. And I'm not so sure that the black farming is that different from the white farming, as Cavanza was talking about in Tanisha, with just, at least in Southern Albemarle, it was, kind of all the same. But, there's more places that this conversation can go. And I'm going to turn it back over to Susie here. And thank you all for staying with us the full 2 hours. When I had asked Susie, I was like, how long did this go? And she said 2 hours. And I'm like, oh, man, that's a long meeting. But you know what? This was good. This was a good conversation sitting around the table. And some of us know each other better than others. But I'm honored that all of you all stayed on the line and kind of listened to this. So we got another conversation on Sunday with Dr. John Boyd, and he's really going to talk about farming as the president of the National Black Farmers Association. But Sue and Susie, you guys want to carry us on out tonight as we close it down?
Yeah.
Thank you all for letting us have this conversation tonight. This has really been special. I got a little chills with this on my arms. I don't know why, but I do. But anyway.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thank you so much for helping make this possible. I just wanted to take a moment and connect what we've heard tonight with the story of Riverview Farm. You know, the stories of the Gardners and the Hudsons are very similar to the experiences of the Carrs and the Greers. You know, there was a value on education. Many of them attended the Virginia State College. 4-H work. Conly Greer and Mary Carr Greer traveled around the county doing 4-H work. Conly Greer was the first African-American extension agent, and Mr. Butler was the first executive director. You know, the importance of Black land ownership. You know, that came up tonight, and the connections with the economics. Hugh Carr and Conly Greer both had to work other jobs other than farming to make their farms work, and so. I think the one thing that came up over and over again that might be the most important, though, is the importance of community. And we heard that over and over again from each speaker. And we know that Mary Carr Greer definitely thought that community was important through all the work that she did. So I just want to thank you all so much for your input tonight. I enjoyed hearing your all's stories, learning about your families. Thank you for being with us this evening. To all the folks that stuck around, thank you all for spending time with us this evening. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you all learned a lot. We hope that you'll visit both Riverview Farm, Ivy Creek Natural Area, and the Yancey Community Center so that we can all learn more. Just as a quick reminder, as Ed said, we're going to have the talk on the 20th, which will focus on the struggle of African-American farmers on a national level. And that talk is also free and open to the public. So we hope that you'll join us. Don't forget about the event that Mr. Brooks talked about on April 3rd that will be at Ivy Creek. That will be free and open to the public. And if you enjoyed this talk and would like to support the Ivy Creek Foundation and what we are doing for our community, please consider going to our website and becoming a donor today. Again, thank you all so much and have a great rest of your evening, folks. Thank you.
Will you share the information for the talk on the 20th? Will you all share that with us?
Yes, I'll email it to you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
you, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.